Final Fantasy IX is a role-playing video game developed and published by Squaresoft for the Sony PlayStation video game console. Originally released in 2000, it is the ninth title in the Final Fantasy series and last to debut on the original PlayStation console. In 2010 it was re-released as a FSON Classics title on the PlayStation Network. The game introduced new features to the series like the active time event, Mognet, and a unique equipment and skill system. Final Fantasy IX's plot centers on a war between nations. Players follow a young thief named Zidane Tribal, who joins with others to defeat Queen Brahne of Alexandria, the one responsible for starting the war. The plot shifts, however, when the characters realize that Brahne is working with an even more threatening person called Kuja. Final Fantasy IX was developed alongside Final Fantasy VIII, but took a different approach by returning to the more traditional style of the early Final Fantasy games. Consequently, Final Fantasy IX was influenced significantly by the original Final Fantasy game, and features allusions to other titles in the series. It was released to critical acclaim and holds the highest Metacritic score of all Final Fantasy installments. Final Fantasy IX was commercially successful, selling 5.30 million units worldwide as of March 31, 2003. Gameplay. In Final Fantasy IX, the player navigates a character throughout the game world, exploring areas and interacting with non-player characters. Most of the game occurs in towns and dungeons which are referred to as field screens. To aid exploration on the field screen, Final Fantasy IX introduces the field icon, an exclamation mark appearing over their lead character's head, signaling an item or sign is nearby. Players speak with Moogles to record their progress, restore life energy with a tent and purchase items a deviation from previous installments, which used a save point to perform these functions. Moogles may request the playable character deliver letters to other Moogles via Mognet. Playable characters might also receive letters from non-playable characters. Players journey between field screen locations on the world map, a three-dimensional, downsized representation of Final Fantasy IX's world presented from a top-down perspective. Players can freely navigate around the world map screen unless restricted by terrain like bodies of water or mountain ranges. To overcome geographical limitations, players can ride chocobos, sail on a boat or pilot airships. Like previous Final Fantasy installments, travel across the world map screen and hostile field screen locations is interrupted by random enemy encounters. Final Fantasy IX offers a new approach to town exploration with the introduction of active time events. These allow the player to view events unfolding at different locations, providing character development, special items and prompts for key story-altering decisions. ATE are occasionally used to simultaneously control two teams when the party is divided to solve puzzles and navigate mazes. Combat. Whenever the playable character encounters an enemy, the map changes to the battle screen. On the battle screen, the enemy appears on the opposite side of the characters. Each battle uses the familiar active time battle system that was first featured in Final Fantasy IV. The character's command list is presented in a window opposite the ATB gauge list. While all characters can physically attack the enemy or use an item from the player's inventory, they also possess unique abilities. For example, the thief Zidane can steal items from the enemy, Echo and Garnet can summon Eidolons to aid the party and Vivi can use black magic to damage the opposition. These character-specific commands change when the player goes into trance mode, which is activated for a short duration when an uncontrollable gauge fills as character sustains damage in a style similar to the limit breaks used in Final Fantasy VII. When the gauge is full, the character's strength is amplified, and the player can select special attack commands. Zidane's skill command list, for example, changes to Dine, allowing him to execute powerful attacks. Vivi's black magic command evolves into Double Black, allowing him to cast two magic spells simultaneously. Through the configurations screen, the player can change the battle style from normal to custom, which allows two players to control any combination of characters during battle. However, two controllers must be plugged into the PlayStation. A character's performance in battle is determined by numerical values for categories like speed, strength and magical power. Character statistics are driven by experience. When players win battles, they are awarded experience points, which accumulate until characters gain experience levels. When characters level up, the statistics for their attributes permanently increase, which may also be amplified by the types of equipment the character is wearing. Winning battles also awards the player money, Tetramaster playing cards, items and ability points. Abilities and equipment. Final Fantasy IX deviates from the style of customizable characters featured in the last two titles by reviving the character class concept, which designates a character to a certain role in battle. For example, Vivi is designated as a black mage and is the only character who can use black magic, and Steiner is a knight and is the only character who can use sword skills. The basic function of equipment in Final Fantasy games is to increase character attributes. Arming Zidane with a mithril vest, for example, increases his base defense statistic. In Final Fantasy IX, weapons and armor include special character abilities, which the character may use when the item is equipped. Once the character accumulates enough ability points in battle, the ability becomes usable without having to keep the item equipped. In addition to granting abilities, the equipment in Final Fantasy IX determines the statistical growth of the characters at the time of level up. Armor not only raises base defense or evasion statistics but raises defense and/or other statistics at level up. Abilities are classified into action and support categories. Action abilities consume magic points and include magic spells and special moves that are used in battle. Support abilities provide functions that remain in effect indefinitely and must be equipped with magic stones to be functional. The maximum number of these stones increases as the characters level up. Tetramaster. Tetramaster is a card-based minigame that can be initiated with various non-playable characters in the field. Players assemble a deck of 5 cards, which can be obtained via chests, given as a reward, or earned from fighting monsters. Each card has various arrows which point to the 4 sides and 4 corners of the card, and various stats that vary between cards, with rarer cards being more powerful. Players take it in turns to strategically place cards on a 5x5 playing grid based on the available directions. Battles can occur when players place a card next to another card, depending on where the player places it. If the defending card has no arrows whilst the attacking card has an arrow pointing towards it, that card is placed under the player's control. When 2 arrows meet with each other, the cards do battle based on their point values, with the losing card coming under the winning player's control, sometimes triggering combos that put multiple cards in the winner's control. After all cards are played, the winner is the player who has the most cards under their control, with a draw occurring if they have the same number of cards. The winning player may choose a card from their opponent's deck out of the ones they put under their control. If the winning player scores a perfect win, however, in which all 10 cards are put under their control, they will win all 5 cards from the opponent's deck. Plot. Setting. Final Fantasy IX takes place primarily on the 4 continents of a world named Gaia. Most of Gaia's population reside on the Mist Continent, named so because the entire continent is blanketed in thick mist. Lands outside the Mist Continent are the outer, lost and forgotten continents are or uncharted territories not explored until midway through the game. Several locations on the parallel world of Terra and the Dreamland of Memoria round out the game's areas. The Mist Continent features 4 nations: Alexandria, Lindblum, Burmecia, and Clera. Alexandria is a kingdom to the northeast of the Mist Continent ruled by a monarchy located in Alexandria Castle. The technologically advanced Lindblum, ruled by a regent, is nestled on a plateau to the southwest where airships regularly fly by. The kingdom of Burmecia, whose capital is showered by eternal rain, is to the northwest and nearby to the isolated Clearan civilization, which is nestled in a giant tree in the desert, protected by a powerful sandstorm. Trino, a large, perpetually dark city, heavily populated by both aristocrats and paupers, is located on the southeast part of the continent. The Mist Continent is extremely mountainous, resulting in a natural barrier between many of the ruling nations. Gaia is inhabited by humans and various non-human races. Alexandria and Lindblum are both populated by a mix of humans and anthropomorphic animals. The Burmesians are anthropomorphic rats who value dance, thus accounting for their general aversion to footwear, and live in both Burmecia and Clera. The Clerans split from the Burmesians when the latter started to appreciate the art of war. The dwarves are short humanoid creatures who appear as inhabitants of the village of Konpeti on the outer continent. There is also a village of black mages that have gained sentient thought, who reside in the outer continent, as well. The Genomes, an artificial race of soulless vessels, inhabit Terra. They will house the once dormant Terran souls when Terra assimilates Gaia. Summoners are similar to other humans, but with a horn on their forehead. In the story, only 2 summoners remain. The others were exterminated when the Terran warship Invincible destroyed their homeland of Madame Sari. Lastly, the Ka are large, seemingly androgynous humanoids, who are recognized as fine gourmands. They inhabit marshlands throughout the world where they catch their main source of nutrition, frogs. Characters. The 8 main playable characters in Final Fantasy IX are Zidane Tribal, a member of a group of bandits called Tantalus masquerading as a theater troupe. Garnet to Alexandro 17, the Princess of Alexandria who has a strange connection to Eidolons, Vioranisha, a young, timid, and kind black mage trying to find the meaning of his existence. Adelbert Steiner, the captain of the Knights of Pluto and loyal servant of Alexandria and Princess Garnet. Freya Crescent, a dragon knight from the city of Burmecia looking for her lost love. Knequan, a Ka whose master wants her to travel the world so that he will learn about cuisine. Eiko Carol, a 6-year-old girl living in Madame Sari, the lost village of the Eidolon summoners, and along with Garnet, one of the last 2 remaining summoners. An Amaranth Coral, a bounty hunter hired to return Garnet to Alexandria. Other main characters include Regent Sitfabal, the charismatic leader of Lindblum. Queen Brahne, Garnet's mother and the power-hungry Queen of Alexandria. General Beatrix, the powerful leader of the female Knights of Alexandria. And antagonist Kuja, an arms dealer and enemy of Gaia. Other minor characters and groups also appear, such as Blank, Zidane's good friend and band partner, but their significance and backstories are revealed as the game progresses. Story: Final Fantasy IX begins with Zidane and the Tantalus Theatre Troupe kidnapping Princess Garnet during her 16th birthday celebration. The group learns that Garnet, who is concerned about Queen Brahne's increasingly erratic behavior, actually wanted to escape to Lindblum to meet with Regent Sid, and had planned to stow away on the theatre ship. The troupe's airship, Prima Vista, is damaged during the escape. It crashes in the evil forest, prompting Zidane to continue the trek to Lindblum without the rest of Tantalus. Zidane and Garnet are accompanied by Vivi and Steiner, who became entangled with Tantalus during their escape from Alexandria. During their journey, Garnet adopts the alias Dagger, and struggles to mingle with the locals. The group learns of a factory inside the village of Dali that manufactures soulless black mage warriors for Alexandria's use. Brahne dispatches 3 powerful ones called Black Waltzes to retrieve Garnet by force, but their mission ends in failure. Upon arriving in Lindblum, the party discover that Regent Sid has been turned into a bug-like oglot by his wife Hilda for his womanizing behavior. Wishing to protect Garnet from Brahne's newfound aggression, he had ordered Tantalus to kidnap her. The party decide to rest in Lindblum, meeting up with Freya and participating in the Festival of the Hunt. When the group learns that Alexandria has invaded Burmecia, Zidane investigates the situation with Freya and Vivi, while Garnet and Steiner head to Alexandria to ask Brahne to stop the war. Zidane's party discover that Burmecia has been conquered by both Brahne and a mysterious man called Kuja, with many of his citizens seeking refuge in the nearby city of Clera. The defense of Clera is organized by Zidane and his party whilst Garnet confronts both her mother and Kuja about the invasion. They refuse to listen to her and Queen Brahne has Garnet's eidolons forcibly extracted from her body. Brahne, traveling on her airship, uses one of Garnet's eidolons, Odin, to destroy Clera. Zidane and company, escaping on Brahne's ship, head to Alexandria to save Garnet, only for Brahne to attack Lindblom, destroying the industrial district and heavily damaging the business and theatre districts with another of Garnet's stolen eidolons, Atomos. Afterward, having arrived at Lindblom, the party are informed by Regent Sid about Brahne's enigmatic arms dealer, Kuja. The party travels to the outer continent, the location of Kuja's headquarters, through an underground tunnel with the help of Kna. There, the party meets a young summoner named Aiko, who assumes herself to be the last survivor of Madame Sari. They also discover a village inhabited by self-aware black mages. Their pursuit of Kuja leads them to the nearby Eiffel tree, an entity that dissipates a fighting stimulant called mist. They learn that Kuja uses mist to create the black mages. The party defeats the Eiffel tree's core and stops the mist from flowing. When the party returns to Madame Sari, they confront Amarant, who was hired by Brahne to apprehend Garnet. Impressed by Zidane's strength, Amarant joins the party, whilst Garnet comes to appreciate that she, like Aiko, is also a summoner from Madame Sari. At the Eiffel tree, Brahne turns against Kuja and attempts to kill him with the eidolon Behemoth. However, Kuja uses the airship Invincible, controlled by a mysterious old man, to gain control of Behemoth, killing Brahne and defeating her army. Before she dies, Brahne and Garnet have a brief reconciliation. The party returns to Alexandria, and the city makes preparations for Garnet to be crowned queen. However, on the very evening of her coronation, Kuja assaults Alexandria with Behemoth. Aiko and Garnet summon the legendary eidolon Alexander, who overpowers Behemoth. Kuja attempts to control Alexander using the Invincible, but is foiled by the mysterious old man whose name is revealed to be Garland. Garland used the Invincible to destroy Alexander and parts of Alexandria. Kuja, still intent on mastering a powerful eidolon to defeat Garland, shifts his attention to Aiko. The party learns of Kuja's desert palace and attempts an assault. However, Kuja imprisons the party and escapes with Aiko to extract her eidolons. During the extraction attempt, Aiko's guardian Mughal Mog uses trance to transform into her true form, the eidolon Medine, disrupting the process. Learning of the powers of trance, Kuja escapes to further his aim of defeating Garland. The party rescues Aiko and also finds Hilda, who turns Sid back into a human. He is now able to design an airship for the party that does not need mist for power. With Hilda's aid, the party pursues Kuja to a hidden place called Terra by opening a portal. In the Tehran town of Brambal, it is revealed that Terra is a parallel world. The people of Terra had created Garland to orchestrate the process of assimilating Terra into Gaia, as the Tehran world was dying. Garland created Genomese Euro-intelligent, sentient beings who lack souls Euro to become future vessels for the souls of the Terrans. The Eiffel tree's existence, the phenomenon of mist, the eidolon's destruction, and even Kuja and Zidane's true purpose of existence, were part of the process. Angered by Garland's motives, the party confronts him. However, Kuja has now obtained enough souls to achieve trance. Kuja ends Garland's life, but not before Garland warns him of his limited lifespan, and that Zidane was the ultimate angel of death, designed to replace him. Enraged by this revelation, Kuja destroys Terra while the party rescues the genomes and returns to Gaia on the Invincible. The party discovers that mist has returned and now envelops all of Gaia. Assisted by the combined forces of Lindblom and Alexandria, they travel to the Eiffel tree, where they are teleported to a mysterious location called Memoria. The spirit of Garland guides the party to Kuja as they aim to prevent his destruction of Gaia. When Kuja is defeated, he uses his trance abilities to target the crystal, the source of life, prompting the appearance of Necron, the eternal darkness bent on destroying life. After Necron is defeated, Gaia is saved and Memoria and the Eiffel tree dramatically collapse. Although Kuja teleports the party to safety, Zidane returns to save him, and is later assumed to have died with Kuja in the collapse. Sometime later, Alexandria has been rebuilt, and Tantalus arrives in Alexandria to perform I Want to Be Your Canary for Queen Garnet. Early scenes reveal what has happened to many of the main characters. Steiner and Beatrix have returned to their old posts as royal bodyguards and have also become romantically involved. Aiko has been adopted by Regent Sid and Lady Hilda. Freya is attempting to start over with her former love, Sir Fratley. Amarant is reunited with Lanny while on his way to Alexandria. Kna has now become the head chef of the Alexandria Castle kitchen. And Black Mages looking identical to Vivi are identified as Vivi's sons. In between these scenes a monologue is given by Vivi where he reminisces about the adventures they had together and bids farewell to everyone, implying his death due to his limited lifespan. The game reaches its final moments with the play being performed. During the performance, one of the performers removes his robe and reveals himself to be Zidane, saved by Kuja's barrier from the collapsing Eiffel tree. Garnet rushes onto the stage, abandoning her dropped summoner pendant, and embraces Zidane. Development of Final Fantasy IX began before Square had finished development on Final Fantasy VIII. The game was developed in Hawaii as a compromise to developers living in the United States. As the series' last game on the PlayStation, Sakaguchi envisioned a reflection on the older titles of the series. Leading up to its release, Sakaguchi called Final Fantasy IX his favorite Final Fantasy game as it's closest to his ideal view of what Final Fantasy should be. This shift was also a response to demands from fans and other developers. Additionally, the team wanted to create an understandable story with deep character development. This led to the creation of active time events. The scenario for the game was written by Sakaguchi. He began early planning on it around July 1998. Director Hiroyuki Ito had the idea to make the protagonist Zidane flirtatious towards women. In the game's conceptual stage, the developers made it clear that the title would not necessarily be Final Fantasy IX, as its break from the realism of Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII may have alienated audiences. This led fans to speculate that it would be released as a add-on to the main series. By late 1999, however, Square had confirmed that the game would indeed be published as Final Fantasy IX, and by early 2000, the game was nearly finished. The developers made several adjustments to the game, such as changing the ending 7 times. Director Ito had designed the battle system used in the game. The game's developers sought to make the game's environment more fantasy-oriented than its PlayStation predecessors. Since the creators wanted to prevent the series from following a redundant setting, Final Fantasy IX distinctly breaks from the futuristic styles of Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII by reintroducing a medieval setting. In the game, steam technology is just beginning to become widely available. The population relies on hydropower or wind power for energy sources, but sometimes harness mist or steam to power more advanced engines. Continuing with the medieval theme, the game's setting is inspired by Norse and Northern European mythology. According to Ito, the development team is attracted to European history and mythology because of its depth and its drama. The main Final Fantasy IX website says the development of the game's world serves as a culmination of the series by blending the successful elements of the past, such as a return to the fantasy roots, with newer elements. The creators made the characters a high priority. The return to the series' roots also affected the characters' designs, which resulted in characters with comic-like looks. Composer Nobuo Uematsu commented that the design staff attempted to give the characters realism while still appearing comic-like. To accomplish this, and to satisfy fans who had become used to the realistic designs of Final Fantasy VIII, the designers stressed creating characters with whom the player could easily relate. Release: Final Fantasy IX's release was delayed to avoid a concurrent release with then-rival Enix's Dragon Quest VII. On October 7, 2000, a demo day for the North American version of Final Fantasy IX was held at the Metron in San Francisco, California. The first American release of the game was also at the Metron. Limited edition merchandise was included with the game, and fans cosplayed as Final Fantasy characters in celebration of the release. In Canada, a production error left copies of Final Fantasy IX without an English version of the instruction manual, prompting Square to ship copies of the English manual to Canadian stores several days later. The game was heavily promoted both before and after its release. Starting on March 6, 2000, Final Fantasy IX characters were used in a line of computer-generated Coca-Cola commercials. Figurines of several characters were also used as prizes in Coca-Cola's marketing campaign. That same year, IGN awarded Final Fantasy dolls and figurines for prizes in several of their contests. Final Fantasy IX was also the benchmark of Square's interactive Play Online service. Play Online was originally developed to interact with Final Fantasy X, but when those plans fell through it became a strategy site for Final Fantasy IX. The site was designed to complement Prodigy's and Piggyback Interactive's official strategy guides for the game, where players who bought the print guide had access to keywords that could be searched for on Play Online's site for extra tips and information. This caused fury among buyers of the guide, as they felt cheated for the expensive print guide. The blunder made GameSpy's top 5 dumbest moments in gaming list, and Square dropped the idea for Final Fantasy X, which was under development at the time. On December 18, 2012, the game was re-released as part of the Final Fantasy 25th Anniversary Ultimate Box Japanese package. Music. The music of Final Fantasy IX was created by Nobuo Uematsu, his last exclusive Final Fantasy score until Final Fantasy XIV, released a decade later. In discussions with Ito, Uematsu was told it'd be fine if you compose tracks for the 8 characters, an exciting battle track, a gloomy, danger-evoking piece, and around 10 other tracks. However, Uematsu spent an estimated year composing and producing around 160 pieces for Final Fantasy IX, with 140 appearing in the game. Nobuo Uematsu composed with a piano and used 2 contrasting methods. I create music that fits the events in the game, but sometimes, the event designer will adjust a game event to fit the music I've already written. Uematsu felt Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII had a mood of realism, but Final Fantasy IX was fantasy, so a serious piece with silly, fun pieces could fit, and he felt the theme was medieval music, and was given a break to travel in Europe for inspiration, looking at old castles in Germany and so on. The music was not entirely composed in the medieval mode. Uematsu claims it would be unbalanced, and a little boring. He aimed for a simple, warm style and included uncommon instruments like the kazoo and dulcimer. Uematsu also included motifs from older Final Fantasy games, because Final Fantasy IX was returning to the roots, so to speak, and incorporated ideas like the old intro for battle music, and arranged the volcano theme from Final Fantasy and the Pandemonium theme from Final Fantasy II. Tantalus Band is also heard playing Rufus' welcoming ceremony from Final Fantasy VII near the beginning of the game. Uematsu was twice reported claiming without hesitation that Final Fantasy IX was his favorite score. The original soundtrack for the game has 110 tracks. An additional soundtrack, Final Fantasy IX Original Soundtrack Plus, was released with 42 more new tracks. Like Final Fantasy VIII and Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy IX features a J-pop ballad, Melodies of Life. The song was composed by Uematsu, written by Hiroyuki Ito in Japanese and Alexander O. Smith in English, and performed by Miko Shiratori. The song itself was sung in Japanese for the Japanese release of the game, and in English for the North American and European releases. Reception. Although at the time it was a top seller in Japan and America, Final Fantasy IX did not sell as well as Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy VIII in either Japan or the United States. As of March 31, 2003, the game has sold 5.30 million copies worldwide. The game was voted the 24th best game of all time by readers of the Japanese magazine Famitsu and 42nd by the users of the website GameFAQs. Critical response. Final Fantasy IX was released to critical acclaim both in Japan and the US. On the review aggregator Metacritic, it has achieved a score of 94%, the highest score for a Final Fantasy game on the site. On Game Rankings it has received a score of 93%, the second highest of any Final Fantasy title, behind Final Fantasy III for SNES. Across the reviews, praise was given to the graphics and nostalgic elements. Critics pointed out the strength of the game within its gameplay, character development, and visual representation. GameSpot noted that the learning curve is easily grasped, and that the ability system is not as complex as in Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy VIII. Each player character possesses unique abilities, which hinders the development of an overpowered character. GameSpot describes the battle system as having a tactical nature and notes that the expanded party allows for more interaction between players and between enemies. Nevertheless, IGN disliked the lengthy combat pace and the repeated battles, describing it as aggravating, and RPGFAN felt the trance system to be ineffective as the meta build-up is slow and unpredictable, with characters trancing just before the enemy is killed. The characters and graphics received positive reviews. Although IGN felt that the in-depth character traits in Final Fantasy IX could be generally found in other Final Fantasy games, it still found the characters to be engaging and sympathetic. GameSpot found the characters, up to their dialogue and traits, amusing and full of humor. IGN also noted that the active time event system helps to expand the player's understanding of the characters' personalities as they question many ideas and emotions. Their semi-deformed appearance, which also covers monsters of every size, contain detailed animation and design. They gave praise to the pre-rendered backgrounds, noting the careful attention given to the artwork, movement in animations and character interactivity. The movies are seen as emotive and compelling, and the seamless transition and incorporation to the in-game graphics helped to move the plot well. Critics acknowledged that the overall storyline was mainly built upon elements found in previous Final Fantasy installments, such as evil empires and enigmatic villains. The main villain, although considered by GameSpot to be the least threatening in the series, was seen by IGN as an impeccable combination of Kefka's cackling villainy, and plenty of the bisononosity that made Sephiroth such a hit with the ladies. Mixed reactions were given to the audio aspects of the game. Some reviewers, such as a PGFAN, felt that the music was uninspired and dull, whilst GamePro praised the audio for evoking emotions throughout the story, from battles to heartbreak to comedy. Some criticism was leveled on composer Nobuo Uematsu, who reused some tracks from past iterations of the series. Still, reviewers have come to agree that this and many other elements are part of the overall effort to create a nostalgic title for fans of the older Final Fantasy titles. The strategy guide also gained criticism. It urged buyers to log on to an online site to gain the information, instead of providing it within the actual guide. The book's given links are no longer accessible on the Play Online website. Tetramaster was seen by GameSpot as inferior and confusing compared to Final Fantasy VIII's minigame Triple Triad, as the rules for it were only vaguely explained in the game and there were very few rewards earned from playing it despite its expansive nature. See also: References. Game quotes. External links.